information, unfortunately, but thankfully I have that under control. But Roland, for many who were expecting the outcome of these investigations, I think that there are those who expected much more than this. There were many of us who was hoping that the outcome of the investigations will re-emphasize our prejudice that we gained as a result of the sensational and emotional commentary that characterized the aftermath of the accidents. So to that class of people, this outcome is not exciting. It has been massaged. It has been influenced so that to keep the realities away from the Ghanaian people. Because that is how they will continue to reinforce their prejudices as far as the unfortunate incident is concerned. And to those who are actually interested in finding out the possible causes in tandem with both domestic regulations and that of our international standards, this can be deemed as satisfactory. And I belong to that school of thought. Because we are dealing with a country that sometimes we are carried away by the drama, sensationalism, and the kind of misinformation we ourselves churn out. And so when investigations are carried out and it fails to be situated in that context or feed that narrative, there's a tendency for us to conclude that it is massaged and it's not, and therefore inaccurate. But I have had the opportunity of reading excerpts from the report. I also followed the presentation of the committee yesterday when they were engaging the media on the contents of the report. And I can say with all certainty that I am pretty much satisfied with the outcome of the investigation, to the extent, like I indicated, that they ensured that domestic regulations were followed. If you look at the introduction, they made references to the Ghana Air Force Staff Instructions Manual and made references to also the, I think, International Civil Aviation Organization's Convention 13, that more or less stipulates the manner in which such investigations should be carried out. And so these boxes were ticked domestically and internationally. Now, when it comes to, I think there are three thematic areas of the report. The first deals with the airworthiness or otherwise of the aircraft. The second plan dealt with the qualifications of the pilot and his co-pilot and the crew on board. Then the third one specifically dealing with the issue of navigational features, the weather conditions of the day, alongside the navigational features of the flight. And let us interrogate these three pillars. First of all, the claims or the findings that indeed the flight was airworthy is something that will be difficult to contest. However, what I find a bit troubling, and there's a need for us to dig further, has to do with even the open acceptance by the committee that indeed that particular aircraft lacked certain navigational features. So the question that needs to be asked, under the circumstances, is it prudent to say that it was airworthy? Especially when we know that the terrain was a bit troubling, and for an aircraft to be able to navigate such a terrain, it needed to have those features that the committee itself identified. And this particular committee did not have it. So was it fit for purpose that particular day? These are questions that we need to dig further. Then again, the committee also revealed that what's the name? There was no automatic flight control system, even on the aircraft. Of course, probably that had to do with because the fact that the aircraft was bought somewhere in 2012 or something like that. At the time, maybe these things were not a prominent feature when it comes to aircrafts of that nature. So that can be forgiven. But one thing came out quite worrying. Within the Ghana Air Force, I got the impression from the report that they had nobody contracted to specifically be in charge of monitoring what we call the weather conditions as far as the flight schedules are concerned on daily, for their daily or routine activities. That was missing in the report. The report indicated that there is the need, as part of their recommendations, for the Ghana Air Force to consider contracting somebody on that basis. So what formed the intel in terms of the weather conditions of the day? What informed the conclusion that the weather conditions were safe to fly, for them to fly? These are questions we need to ask from where I sit. Then there's also the issue of the monitoring of the flight data. The report also indicates that there was no prompt monitoring of that flight data. So it raises serious internal issues when it comes to the operations of the Ghana Air Force. And that is why I agree with you. For all you know, if you engage them too, they are likely to tell you that the resources to be able to put all these things in order, they do not have access to these resources. So we must take advantage of the report, like the chair indicated, and ensure that the needed retooling is done. As far as the Ghana Army is concerned, and to a very large extent, the Ghana Air Force. Because until that is done, this exercise will be an exercise in futility. We cannot simply spend money to do these investigations, come out with these findings, and add it to the shelf. There's the need for government to openly declare, through the Ministry of Defense, what interventions it seeks to roll out to address many of these recommendations. And we need to be given a time frame. I am confident to make these demands because I know the orientation of the man at the helm of the affairs of our country. And I'm sure that President Mahama is not a leader who is interested in quick fixes. He's demonstrated from his first term and even to now his commitment to finding lasting solutions to many of our germane problems as a country. And for me, I think that there's a need for us to call on him once again to demonstrate that leadership by providing that prompt action that is required to retool the Ghana Army and the Ghana Air Force for that matter. So that if for nothing at all, when we look back in history, and we are reminded about this unfortunate incident that claimed the lives of many of our compatriots, we can also be consoled by the fact that the president at the time took advantage of the situation and injected into the Ghana Army the necessary investments that they need to be able to be efficient. But mind you, I am still interested. Maybe that report will not be made public. I am interested in the manner of response from the Ghana Armed Forces, especially after the accident. So this dealt with the airworthiness of the what do we call it? The aircraft and the weather conditions at the day. But I think that even within the Ghana Army, they need to do an internal investigation, an assessment of how they responded and whether indeed as an institution their response is something they can be excited or they are so happy about. And if something can be done in the future, possibly to avoid many of the lapses that some of us saw and had concerns about, it is in their own interest. Because for me, it still beats my imagination that there are zones in this country that our Ghana Army is unable to have access to timely.
Okay.